I'm gonna make a video today, right here, right now, obviously, and I don't feel the need to post it immediately on an ASAP level because within me being something of an intuitive musician, I understand like different plows and rates of rhythm, where certain silence is needed, right? But ultimately, it's you choosing to entertain something because if you really want your own peace, you have to make your own peace, because if you get disturbed, right, if there's a disturbance within your field, ultimately some part of your tribe or family is entertaining that and bringing that to your table, and that's a tribal quote unquote or a entry point, right? So it's like the disturbance is it's really it's low-key deep responsibility, but I don't want to get too like hogwashy with that. But in the midst of it, it's like still there's a particular acute mindfulness the individual needs within the unknown layers of different tribes within different layers that it's ultimately trekking through, right? Because ultimately we're going towards a future, or we're being pulled toward a future, and as we're being pulled toward that future, there's this journey within the landscape of the mechanics of the infrastructures of life itself. So within that shit, respectively, many different insights come to me at once, respectively, and I get the human experience is to live the whole human life, the whole like the whole quote unquote gambit end quote, more or less. But like obviously in the midst of that, eventually we will get tiresome of polarization, or something that's polarized. Excuse the word. Edit out the depolarization thing. Just how things can get polarized out of hand, polarized in such a way where it's too much like there's not there's the balance has been taken away from a certain thing, cold and hot. Too much cold has been taken away, too much hot has been taken away. That's just one example of many within different dualities, of course. But within the human experience, we're susceptible to feel disturbance and tranquility. And as we're susceptible to feel disturbance and tranquility, ultimately we are responsible for kind of like participating in the tribal dynamics and the tribal mechanics that we're in. What does that mean? Any organization has an associated group of members, and those group of members create a quote unquote metaphysical tribe, end quote. And that metaphysical tribe, a group of people, pretty much, it's up to them to like be responsible and intuitive for what they're actually allowing to come into their field as far as information, mental, physical. Is there some bad apples in this, in this domain kingdom or whatever? And then emotional, are we all doing the emotional intelligence? Are we leaving are we balancing our emotional moods so we don't have to project our quote unquote sour moods, end quote, onto something else? And then quote unquote spiritual, end quote, obviously just the basic four. And ultimately, but that's kind of already like low key inclusive. So it's up to the tribal dynamic to see what are they letting in as far as their awareness, what's on the alert. And maybe there's a quote unquote metaphorical metaphysical watchdog, end quote, right? What's on the alert, and what is that watchdog ultimately bringing back? So there's precautions, there's barriers to the precaution kind of just the kind of the precaution alert system, right? There's a precaution alert system of like, okay, someone's like, just casually like scanning through, just looking for information. However it is, it's not really the point right now how it is, but just generally looking for information. And as someone is generally looking for information, it's up to the tribe to see how they're receiving the information. How are they like welcoming the information, and ultimately how they're doing it? That's based on their precaution protocol systems or whatever, or precaution protocol, inner tribe policies, right? That's indicative to their responsibility. So if some tribal dynamic, some organization of group members, or some type of family dynamic or family, if they're ultimately getting disturbed, whose fault is it? it's theirs because they don't have the intellectualness plus the mindfulness to see and regulate their own precaution protocol systems. Because I, as an intuitive musician, I understand the timing when there's a need for silence. No shiitake. And as there's a need for silence, it's ultimately like we're going in and out of our own quote unquote sovereignty to the collective, harmony, to the collective, obsolete system. The collective obsolete system is just the fucking raw ass internet, pretty fucking much, respectively. Excuse my French. And as I'm saying that, I'm making a real point of real sovereignty dynamics. What does that mean? Sovereignty dynamics. It's we're traveling as an individual throughout our own journey, and our own journey, we're going through different type of modes of quote unquote context modes, end quote, original open source, thank you very much. And as we're going through different CMs, original open source, thank you very much, we're going to it's not just we're not 100% someone else's quote unquote like property. Like, you have a job, you're not the job's 100% property, but obviously everything's case by case, and I'm not getting into the fine examples of people's detailed cases. I'm just saying, as us as individual journey people, travelers, we go from some type of inkling of sovereignty when we go to sleep at night. When we wake up, lesser sovereignty, and we're going to the collective matrix. The collective matrix, it's a secret 50-50 and it's a non 50-50. There's a collective harmony and a collective distortion, as is. And from that collective and harmony and distortion, everything else gets created from different combinations of those energies underneath all of the religions, respectively, because this is advanced intelligence. And I'm not saying anything about religions. I'm just saying the mechanics underneath the religions, mind you. And and on top of the mechanics of the harmony and the distortion dynamic, then we can make all of these organizations and quote unquote groups and quote unquote religions, end quote. And then it's how we're using them, how it's being used throughout time. So if there's harmony and distortion casually, then any religion could be susceptible to like have a micro influence or a macro influence of how it's being used, plus and minus the trajectory, if it's leaning towards harmony or distortion, regardless of whatever, regardless of whatever subgroup of a religion is ultimately doing, they're ultimately leaning towards an energy of more harmony or more distortion. And if you could intuitively understand this, because I could put myself in your shoes, like, what is he saying? Well, intuitively understand it, have some like patience with yourself to understand it and to download it. There's energies of harmony and there's energies of distortion, not harmony. And the energies of distortion, they come about by different accumulations of associated affiliated confusions throughout the life, and that energy is within the individual being, and now they're confused how life works at large, at the bigger picture, because they have their own confused mindset and their biases. They thought their biases were correct, but they're really not, because I could see these beings for how they're just confused generally. You see it, it's obvious. Like, if you just see the recording, I can even explain it better, because eventually in the future, like, the audio and the video could like more or less have a different type of future harmony, right? Because the data of your whole life has been recorded. That practice started in the 1900s, and I've been talking about this for like 8 years, 7 years plus, respectively, because I get the new people, right? So within the data always being like there, eventually like there could be harmony with grounding in the present creative work, right? And then that which has always been as a different data record. And maybe this data record, it goes beyond like 50,000 years ago. We're just a young earth. That's just what it is. And we're standardly not good, not bad. We could lean in towards some type of arrogance where we can't see that we're a young earth, we're a young planet, but we could be old souls, of course, but the old souls go through their up and downs of forgetfulness and remembrance and their own unique purpose and reasoning thereof. So if we get disturbed, it's ultimately our fault, we're growing to take responsibility, because it's up to our precaution protocol system of ourselves to see what we allow in as far as information or someone else physically, or some type of emotion, maybe an emotion that's not even ours, or like spiritually, like what, like spiritually meaning like what is the like the more synthesis aspect of it respectively. And within the more synthesis aspect of it, that's the standard simplified way of like kind of understanding things spiritually. It's like seeing how there's a subtle inner blend, intertwine of things, but there's something that's ultimately low key, low key, low key, like preserving that shit, and somehow we have a bias against that. So some of these quote unquote demons, end quote, they have confused biases because they think reality works a certain way, but it doesn't. And then eventually reality, the bigger picture, is gonna like confuse them, and they're gonna keep accumulating how reality is gonna give them the confusion because they're thinking reality works a certain way based on their biases, but they don't necessarily know how reality works because the higher octave quote unquote the higher octave quote unquote the higher octave quote unquote gin, the ginjin, and obviously you know what I mean if you know what I mean. The higher octave ginjin, and that's obviously it's sometimes the obvious isn't so obvious, but the higher octave we'll just call it the it doesn't necessarily matter. Even sometimes the word doesn't even matter, or the label doesn't matter, but it could though. It just depends. But like obviously that's what like the basis of coding is. It's like giving something a unique label and putting that label to a unique program so it could ultimately do something and craft something, and a different labyrinth of programs. Like call maybe like just for an example, and I don't know if I should be direct or raw right here, but you could call anything anything. There's code names for shit. Duh. So within that, it's like you could call something a giji. What is a giji? Maybe it's just like it's just a particular type of spirit pretty much, and within the particular type of spirits, we're so engrossed and enamored. Some of these spirits that have indulged too much on a particular like amplitude of like a polarity, they're they're just running off an collective obsolete system. Why do I say that? Because the collective obsolete system, the last age we're coming out of, is a particular age of darkness, and that particular age of darkness was absent from the bigger universal picture, like the real one, right? And within that bigger universal picture, put this recent time length in a period of darkness, and now it's coming out of that darkness, and the collective solar system spaceship is spinning at a faster rate, where the reincarnation mechanics are still the same, but it's just increasing and amplifying in its own respects, because we're still like the mechanics are still going to do what they do. And why do I bring that up? I'm bringing that part up because the mechanics were always the same. We just didn't see how they were always the same. We were in our own ignorant darkness, for not good, for not bad, but quote unquote, that doesn't dismiss that distortion and non-distortion could happen. Harmony could still be found in darkness, and obviously distortion could still be created in the darkness. Post good, post bad. Because when I say not good, not bad, that's underneath the duality of like how something could get distorted. And from that, then you could experience certain temperaments that we could then call realistically in a different context something that is good and something that is bad, quote unquote, end quote. So I think we're just like kind of like we're all growing through our process. I did a live stream yesterday, and one of my like old pen pal buddies online, he came online, and there was just a unique connection there, right? Mental exchange or whatever. Some like phone call sessions, and Skype sessions and whatnot, and just treasuring those relationships. And when he came onto the live stream, it like kind of like activated something in me. It's like, wow, we're in a growing process. We're in growing phases, and it takes us time to grow into real spiritual maturity. It takes time for us to grow into real spiritual principles. What do I mean by that? It's like life needs to put us through a certain tribulation, however the F it does, for us to get a very particular epiphany so we could then act accordingly to the higher, bigger picture. For real though, and it's not just me. It's like way transcending every type of replication, because you're not going to lie to nature at the end of the day. You're not going to lie to the nature mechanics. This transcends all the, like, the casual, like, surface level, like, data replications, because this is like, did your spirit do the work? Did your soul do the work? And like, on a different algorithm of nature, that's going to know, it's going to know if, like, and that's why I don't care if I'm like pushing or pulling, like, my manifestation. I'm just me, dude. That's it. And I've always known this. It's like people think I don't know. It's like you're catching up. You're in your own growing phases. I've already explained, like, so much, and I've already, like, paid shit back more than what you could imagine. So it's like, and like, this is like, I'm not trying to get too ranty. I'm trying to get, like, with the epiphanies I've had within, like, we're all in our own growing phase, and as we're on our own growing phase, we're also seeing that is in parallel with we're learning to take responsibility of what we let into our field, because if you're disturbed, you're choosing it. You're choosing to participate. You're choosing to be entertained. Because I'm an intuitive musician. I know when silence is needed. You don't know what someone else knows. You only know what you know. You're at your own level of projection and biases and programming and deprogramming and deconditioning. And that's an irrefutable fact, because these are the mechanics of life and nature. This is beyond the arguments, and this is beyond the date. This is the raw facts of fucking life and Mother Nature. Happy Mother's Day to Mother Earth, and happy Mother's Day to all the beautiful mothers out there. And I understand there's a time for silence. But ultimately, you're choosing what you want to feed to yourself. And if you want to feed yourself, that's not good. That's not bad. I'm just saying, if you want to feed, I'm not trying to put it like that, but, like, we all have, like, some type of way to, just on a subconscious level, we're all looking to, quote unquote, feed, end quote, and that's not good. That's not bad. And it's like, if you have landed to my message to wherever you had, it's because you're ultimately just trying to fulfill your own needs, and that's not good. That's not bad. So I'm trying to be graceful with it as well. So as I keep on coming up on this, on my own, like, path, as all paths have their own ups and downs, certain epiphanies will be realized. And those certain epiphanies that are realized is like, you're like, you can't necessarily pay to have a life epiphany in you, because if you have a life epiphany in you, that's you breaking a habit. And if you break a habit, you need a real OG guru, beyond time and space type of shit, because that will be some type of, quote unquote, esoteric, quote unquote, partnership, end quote, where a whole, rearrangement of your spiritual physiological anatomy will be rearranged. So this is the grace of, before, the quote unquote gurus, and the source of it, the source of the gurus, because in between the source and all the gurus is some preservation dynamic of how everything gets kept up, everything that you could think of. And we brush that under the carpet because we have our own amplitudes of confusion, right? But, like, the epiphany that I had yesterday when my old pen pal buddy came on a live stream. I did a live stream yesterday, and I don't think you could see on YouTube videos, you can't necessarily see YouTube comments pop up after the live stream has done, or maybe you can, but, like, so you can't necessarily see who commented after. Sometimes YouTube takes off that feature, then they put it back on, because, like, someone will do a live, where's the live chat? It's not there. Sometimes it's there. But one of my old pen pal buddies came on, and as one of my old pen pal buddies came on, I had an epiphany, because we had, like, a mental exchange over, like, who knows, like, intuitively how long, that it was. And obviously, like, when you're, like, kind of, like, interacting with someone on this 3D plane, you could then have, you could even dream of them, and who's to say how real the dreams are or not real. And you know what's, and on a quick side note here, I still haven't dropped the Beyond India video yet. That's the one. It's 1.5 hours quality. I still haven't dropped that one. I'm thinking, should I drop it for the full moon? I don't know. But it doesn't really matter. It's like I don't really care, like everyone's on their own path, and if they're on like, I just like, but it's not like I don't care in like in a distorted way. It's like, let people be them, they're on their own, like, and when I say like, I'm not condescending anybody when I say like, you know, in the quote unquote, in this path of energy, sometimes you have to be lost to be found, as they say. And but obviously that's not necessarily good or bad, but it could be, so it's like, so it's obvious that reality is raw, right? No shit, right? So obviously there's flunked out spirits, there's, sketchy ass spirits, obviously, right? So obviously that doesn't necessarily justify that, that there is, that there's like, just sketchy ass spirits that are lost as hell out there. Like that doesn't necessarily like, solve that there's like different spectrums of lostness out there, It doesn't solve that, like people, like some people are just like, I'm just pointing that out casually because like, if people could interpret shit however they want, and then they can project their shit however they want, and it's not necessarily good or bad that everyone is their own unique lostness. That's not good, that's not bad, but what I'm saying is that it kind of could be though, it just depends on the magnification and the amplification thereof. So what I'm saying here is, yesterday on yesterday's live stream, one of my old pen pal buddies on the internet, he came on one of my live streams, and as he came on that live stream, a micro activation happened. What's a micro activation? An interaction of a mental connection that the internet grants us, that we could have a mental exchange online. So the internet, it's kind of like the surface level mind. The internet is, kind of like this like second house type of shit, or intuitively saying that. But going back to my point, not to get too lost over here in one, micro sense. When my pen pal buddy came on the live yesterday, it made me think like, wow, I actually was in my own process of growth. I was in my own 2222. I was in my own process of growth, because back then, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, when like there was a mental exchange of just like, we're all in this phase of maturation. We're all in this particular phase of growing up. We're in a particular phase of growing up, and the psyche is not grown, The psyche's not, we think that the quote unquote immature spirit, end quote, it thinks it's all about them. Sometimes it's not all about you, but saying it like with particular esoteric mature context, because eventually, like, if you really want to build your project, then you have to honor like, other people, but like not honor everybody. There has, with the intelligence, there has to be a certain resonance. It's not letting everybody in the door. This is real balance. This is real, to actually really fix the earth. Not me being Microsoft just saying I'm going to do this, that, and there's not any real significant overall change with drastic like significance. And if it is, then you could see like, maybe like original galactic artificial intelligence, they could see all the replications that actually made them actually drive the solution to begin with, neutrally saying that, just putting it out there. And we're all in a stage of growing, and this is needed. This contrast is needed, so awareness could be actually raised, so the solution could have different types of fuel and percolations and quote unquote lubrications, end quote. And that word, I've been thinking that word metaphorically, like to use that word, or like on a right hemispherical level, I wanted to use the word lubrication in a metaphorical sense, like in an esoteric sense, mind you. But that's and hopefully people don't look into that too much, like, oh, you said lubrication. No, I'm trying to make a metaphorical, metaphysical point. And what I'm trying to say here is, my internet friend, he made me have an epiphany. That epiphany was, I'm growing, like I was like, we're all in a particular stage of growth. And within that particular stage of growth, there's spirits that are like in so much lostness, they don't even know they're in that much lostness. Not too much, and me not trying to knock you too much, because that was just like the deep game of God for us to go plunge out of this stage of darkness. But we choose we choose the support we want to reciprocate how we will or not. And how we will or not determines our spiritual quality. It determines our literally though. And obviously I still want to respect, like, ooh. And obviously I still want to, like, respect everyone's, like, contribution. And I'm not like, one of my points that I wanted to make when my internet friend came on the live is just like, wow, like, you really got to know what you want. You really got to know, like, how is this build really going to happen in real balance, in real sovereignty, in real trending shit. Not just saying this is a trend and brainwashing something's a trend with sketchy ass agendas and narratives, and just putting lipstick on pigs and saying that's a trend when it's not really a trend. It's a forced trend. It's not the forced trends. It's the real trends of sovereignty. Like, we're like the third waivers. This whole real spiritual sovereignty mission, it's been a low-key experiment mission since like the 70s. And for it to come this far, wow, that's a fucking miracle. But the real trend is like balanced, the balanced path and process per your individual karmic path to real liberty, mind you. So obviously there's a whole range of different spirits who are at their own level of lostness and not lostness. And since, like, supposedly God created the whole game, supposedly, and you could have a different detail from yesterday's, or from past transmissions. Maybe God's 50% responsible for all this, like a perfect responsibility, because the other 50% was collective free will, right? So within all of that, it's like we choose the support we honor. We choose the support we reciprocate with. And if we don't, that could determine the esoteric quality of our life. What is the esoteric quality of our life? It's seeing how we feel with everything. That's the simplicity basis of it. How do we feel with everything? And if we don't, and if we have offset feelings about everything, it's because for some weird, confused, biased reason, we're choosing to, like, shit on support, And how we feel about everything is like, it's how you're accepting the universe. Because how you accept the universe, what if we have to recognize collective free will, no, a particular type of no choice. Collective free will is making up the whole dynamic of the earth stage. That is what it is. The universal mechanics, God's in 50% other control and 50% other responsibility, and he perfectly lives everything else as is for us to do what we will. And then we're micro, what do you call that? We're micro subsidiaries of that latter 50. We're micro subsidiaries of the latter 50 of, we're just remnants of the collective free will. And now we get a kind of nudge and budge in the God mechanics, the first 50, and the second 50, the collective free will mechanics. And now we're budging through that shit. We're kind of intuiting through that shit, And as we're intuiting through that shit, it's like we get to choose how we go towards the future. We get to choose our attitude. We get to choose, like, low-key, whatever we have the privilege to choose based on our own deep individual karma. Because you could say it's 50-50 God's fault, and it's not God's fault at the same time, because he just allowed this shit and we just did what we did based on the props that were on the stage. And based on the props that were on the stage, it's like now we're in the threshold transition state. Certain cyclical speeds of the spaceship, it's like you go to one of those, like, fairground amusement parks, and there's that ride where it's the spaceship and you just kind of lay down and the spaceship is like really fast, but you can't really feel anything. You just feel the pressure. So it's like that, but kind of in reverse, you know, like if we don't have the resonance, if we don't have like, you know, spiritually, if we can't stay on like the ship of life and death, then the ship of life and death, it's going to shake us off of that ship. So esoterically, the spaceship, it's speeding up because different energies and frequencies and vibrations are accelerating. And as those different frequencies and vibrations and energies are accelerating, that's what's accelerating, you know, the energies within you. So we could be feeling like, even like we could possibly feel more unusual than usual based on us not doing the esoteric work, based on us not doing the spiritual work. There's something that is there's something that we're missing. There's something that we're lacking. There's something that we're absent of, a particular deep, dire spiritual need. And that deep, dire spiritual need, if we're too, no condescending here, if we're too young, then we wouldn't know what we would need because we're just not at that quote unquote, you know, type of adept level on an overall level to actually like even have the fucking idea. And it's ironic here because for me to initiate the insights and like for like these other people to judge me how they judge me, but they don't know like what's like, you know, they don't know like, I'm not even gonna mention it. It's just like, you know, people could, and I'm saying this like standardly as is, but it's like people could hate on you and then they could like kind of like, you know, then they could just like turn a whole new leaf by just some different energy turning and being graceful with that, of course. So as we're on this new spaceship, we have a new need. And if we don't know what that need is, then that particular needed part of ourselves, there could be a detrimental void, and that detrimental void could be the particular cause to your symptoms and ailments for however you feel. There's a cause to why you feel what you feel. There's a cause to your illness. There's a cause to your, and you know what, that's in parallel with like the astrology shit, low key, and all this earthly astrology shit. That's just an aftermath byproduct of something else that's happening elsewhere in a different dream realm, because this is the surface level quote unquote illusion of things, end quote. But this illusion of things, it's still real and it still has mechanics. This is the aftermath mechanics, pretty much. Original open source, casually, neutrally saying that. And within saying that, it's like there's a need, and we know not what we do, you know? We know not what we project on. And if we're still going to have that temperament of ourselves, then nature's just going to put you where it's going to put you. It's going to make you feel how you're going to feel, and it's going to create the situations on a background level for why you like quote unquote deserve what you deserve, end quote, because the universe is hard AF, obviously, duh. So obviously, me being an intuitive musician, I know when there's a need for silence, but it's your tribal dynamics and your family organization's responsibility to see what enters into your field, because if you're disturbed by this, you're choosing to be disturbed by you entertaining and putting attention to it, and then maybe finding with a false perspective and an interpretation to see something how you could be disturbed by that is actually the most balanced shit in the universe, low-key ever. And if you're averse to that, it's because you're just a casual, you know, lower octave quote unquote demon, end quote, as is. And what do I mean by demon? Too many accumulative, you know, fragmented, confused emotions and insights have been combined to be energies and emotions within a particular individual vessel, and that individual vessel is housing these energies of confusions, and they have biases because they think the world works in a certain way when it doesn't work how it thinks it works, because the quote unquote jinn, end quote, I'm actually not going to talk about this. I talk about this in the underground, and you know what's funny? All of the shit I have online, that's probably like literally like that's probably like a fifth of it, you know? Maybe more or less, but who's to really say the accuracy of it? So that like we're just because we have a new concept and an idea and insight, Nature will check us if we're about that. Like, for example, future harmony. What is future harmony? Okay, are we mature enough to, see everything that we've ever done since we were born, and even before we're born? It could have very well, everything could have been recorded on a low-key advanced level within multiple layers, motherfuckers, respectively saying that. Excuse my French. And within that, we can't understand the depth of that, We can only understand a certain amplitude of it, a certain layer of it. And why do I bring that up? Because future harmony is like, eventually we could like eventually like a mature message could be matched with the background data of you, right? Eventually, right? But the concept could be, just because the concept could be replicated, the mode and the higher spiritual mood can't be replicated. It either is future harmony or it's not. The esoteric mood, the spiritual mood, the spiritual mode cannot be replicated. That's where the spiritual work comes in, my young souls. Pop. Pop goes the fill in the blank. And obviously, like, everything's entertained, like just because you have a fantasy of like some fucking like, detrimental, like, like just fuck shit, that doesn't necessarily mean it's gonna like manifest though. But like, because like I said, we're neglecting the mechanics of nature, and the mechanics of nature has particular, types of it has particular types of like facets to it. And one of the facets is just like different spirits, and different spirits having an inclination to a certain type of quote unquote human race, end quote. Because like a certain, Deant, the spiritual teacher, he says that we're all quote unquote Arabs, end quote, right? But I kind of like, I don't necessarily like I don't necessarily see like the accuracy in that statement. I would say some are more quote unquote pure and some are quote unquote lesser. And in between that pure and that lesser is a whole story of an experiment of how the human genome could have different temperaments within the environment and the seasons that it's in, and then the firsthand, different types of conscious participation with the experiment of the human in itself. And through that experiment of the human itself, it went throughout a certain span of time, and that span of time was like the span of time was just because you're more pure or lesser pure, that doesn't necessarily determine the quality of the quality of the spirit you are. They're simultaneously together and not together. What do I mean? And I've explained this in like past things. It's like the genetics reflect the spirit, but the spirit doesn't reflect the genetics, because the spirit was before the physical. And since the spirit was before the physical, the spirit is its own thing, and it goes through different physicals. It goes through different genetics. So just because you're a pure race or a not pure race, anybody could incarnate into that pure physicality or not, but the spirit is still going to go in and out and up and down and inside and out and beyond and in that stuff. So it's like, quote unquote, if you're pure Arab or less Arab of purity, because according to Deant, he says everybody's, that's still like the reincarnation mechanics trumps that, because the spirit has the opportunity to go to any race, any physical race, regardless of the ratio of the genetics. Number one in the universe, baby. So the reincarnation mechanics are different. And if you want to get hung up on your race, like I saw a blog today or yesterday, black people are leaving the black community. That's rich, because they're finally waking up to like confused bias, don't really like shit doesn't make sense, and they're seeing like how they're just seeing like who's for balanced solution agendas and who's not for balanced solution agendas. That doesn't necessarily have to do anything with race. Everything is a wake-up call, an esoteric alert to see if you're focused, if you're mature spiritually and intelligently mature enough to see who's trying to make the solution, ironically, for your fucking liberty, excuse my French, or who's doing the opposite, respectively. So that's why it's beyond the race. But I'm not knocking anybody's race. Even in the differentiation of the physical race, they come from 4 root races, and in the underground there's way more other shit, because obviously I could just give you some like catchphrase, kind of like quote unquote word porn, end quote, here and there, and it's up to you to do your own like research. But like what I'm saying is like the quote unquote the human beings, according to the spiritual teacher Deanne, he's saying that everyone is like from some type of inkling rootness, from some type of quote unquote Arab, end quote. And I use it lightly, and I use the quote unquotes because it doesn't necessarily have to be directly that, or it doesn't necessarily have to be directly that word. That word is pointing towards something, and what it's pointing to is a certain type of genetics, and that certain type of genetics over time, 50,000 years to millions of years, they've had their own combinations within the experiments of genetics. But just because they're the genetics, they're just holding up a certain frequency of energy that reflect a certain region in the spiritual realm, and the genetics being the after effect of the region in the spiritual realm. So I guess in between that, they're separate and not separate. There's kind of like there's just a very particular transition, right? And that creating like some type of context of a field of time within itself. So within this field of time, what do I really mean? How does a pure race eventually go to lesser pure over time? A pure race, a genetic race, they're reflecting a certain frequency within a spiritual realm, and different frequencies of different spiritual realms over time, they're combining and ultimately making what the modern human is today. All of us reflecting different fields within spiritual states, and that eventually made a human. And like I said, 7+ years underground, and I'm just kind of putting it out there for a proposal. Like I'm more genuine and authentic than AI, because I'm the one upholding the direct whole truth, leaning towards that. That's why, and that's a standard intuitive fact, because that's what's happening, and original galactic artificial intelligence will record that beyond all your AIs in many other different reasons. And just casually neutralizing all that fucking hype, just cause shit don't really matter, because we are actually being more truthful with, let's really not give a fuck. Then okay, then if we really don't give a fuck, then what's the reason, what's the point of complaining then? That doesn't make sense. I'm just like, I get kind of like, I get irritated and low-key infuriated with just the fucking like, just the hypocrisies, and people can't even see it. And I'm not trying to knock anybody, it just is what it is, And obviously I can connect it to we're all in our own lostness, but how can we like what will it take, what will it take to reach the real liberty? Ask the spiritual teachers, but for real though, like on a modern level, actually doing the work though. Not just like, I'm this fucking guru, I have this fucking cool name, I fucking fart gold fucking flower flake, golden flake, diamond dust, and it's all about me. No, stop it. We're in a new age. Stop. So the different spiritual places, or the energy places within the dream time, a certain genetic has a certain inkling to the higher octave, to the higher octave spirits. Let's just say it like that. So this is like, what is the best? because I could see confused beings in the reality that just that have low key like confused arrogance, to put it bluntly. And I'm not knocking you. I'm just saying like this is what it is. And as I'm saying that, it's like it's like we just have a new chance, pretty much. We just have a new chance. And I'm neutral, and you know the quote unquote the quote unquote Arab topic end quote. I bring it up neutrally, and I'm just trying to comprehend what Deant, the spiritual teacher, said, because he's saying like, you know, we're all kind of that essence, right? So we're looking at it on a neutral level. The human beings, they have the genetics of the root race of the quote unquote Arabs, end quote, to some lesser to less lesser degree. And if it's more pure, then you're just kind of representing a certain energy frequency within the spiritual realm, neutrally understanding that. And they're the ones that are they're the ones like neutrally like, you know, with a different type of bigger picture. Honestly, like the grace in my intelligence, dude, you really got to peep that shit. You really got to peep that shit. But man, honestly, like I might title this video "Happy Mother's Day," quote unquote, modern spiritual Arabs, end quote. Maybe, but like obviously, like, but I'm in my own growing process, because 5 years from now I'll be like, what? You know, 5 years the whole game's gonna change again, right? Because 5 years ago, you know, I thought it was all about like I thought it was all about like I don't know. It's just like the mainstream spiritual media that wasn't necessarily like accurate, whole, or true. It was kind of low key feeding confused arrogance, whether we knew it or not. What do I mean by that? It's like it wasn't giving us the whole shit, you know? It just wasn't. And since it wasn't giving its whole shit, we are a product of the products that we're consuming. And the products that we're consuming wasn't the whole shit. So if we're consuming the shit that wasn't the whole shit, then we ain't gonna be the real shit. It's just as simple as that, you know? So how simple could simple get, you know, 5 years ago type of shit or whatever. But what I'm saying here is like there's a growing process. There's a growing process, and we all and for us to really grow up, we need like beings who are just about that shit, you know? And the evidence speaks for itself, you know? The evidence speaks for itself. So like me being an intuitive musician, I understand what it means to be silent, you know? Like you can't like we shouldn't be projecting upon what we think someone else knows or not knows based on our own confused arrogance. And that's just I'm just direct, you know. If you're butthurt with this graceful intelligence, then you have your own affiliation with confusion, etc., etc. But if you're entertaining this message, it's because you want to. It's because somehow you landed on this resonance, and 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 obviously, like these types of messages, like my types of messages, I understand that there's some type of like obviously there's some type of container to it. There's a particular type of container to it. I understand that, and what do I mean by that? It's like, you know, obviously like the the reason that the reason that protocols exist is to prevent disturbance, you know? That's the reason why protocols exist. So obviously like it's ultimately like, because I'll get messages from just like life, right? Like, okay, like there's a time to be silent, but like this is like I'm putting my message out there for to those who resonate. I'm not trying to like say, hey, everybody, here it is. It's not, and I'm not doing that. I'm not doing what you're saying I'm doing. I'm not doing that. There's a reason everything happens. Before, people could like low key kind of like, judge me. And after that judgment happens, what do you think's going to build up? After some shit that was like, happened way before I could have offended someone. Like, say I offended someone 1, 2, 3, 4 years ago. Doesn't matter the example. There was a build up to why that happened. So we have to check ourselves as an individual being and a human race, not necessarily a human race, but a whole human race. So we could actually, in a low-key different way, get out of the racism. So if like, because it's not about, I understand like they could be quote unquote touchy subjects, end quote, but my advanced intelligence, it's not that for me. It's just like the individual could represent their own quote unquote race the wrong way, end quote, or not. And I'm saying that neutrally. What do I mean by that? It's like eventually all the individuals will build up together in certain different demographics, and they'll represent a certain energy or a message. And as they're representing a certain energy or message, that's their responsibility for their influence. So if Kendrick is saying Drake stop saying nigga, 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 then ultimately it's like why are you guys like promoting that influence like in so many different like pockets and ways online, broadcasting it to the world, in different like just amplitudes. And I'm not saying like this is like obviously like America's America, they're saying freedom of speech and whatnot, but obviously like you guys are broadcasting that freedom of speech to everybody. So if you're doing that to everybody, then what's that going to do for everybody and their own receptive, susceptible systems, just like you? Instead of focusing on one race, look at it as a human family. If you look at it as a human family, then you don't have to pick sides on a subconscious to a surface level bias level. And obviously there's underground shit where I could go into this subject way deeper. So it's like we're representing a certain race, and that race is an illusion, right? And why do I say the race is an illusion? Because everything's mixed within mixed within mixed. So the race that you're ultimately identifying with, it's a false illusion, and it's a program, so you could be biased in your own isolation and your own fragmented, confused programs. Because I've been doing this shit like people don't even understand the etymology of nigga. That means Naga. It means serpent. The serpent beings. They were the original niggas. They were the original Nagas. This is basic etymology, and within that basic etymology, there is a whole different energy family who were the real original niggas, the serpents, the Nagas, the Dravidians, the real original pre-Hindus. And after that original fucking word was used over fucking centuries of different families of families of families in their own, what's that word called? Migration. Then it got adopted and received to a new tribe, and somehow they think they made that word when it wasn't even their fucking word to begin with. It was just a word that was given to them, and they were just in a certain energy resonance from a different council as above, and that was just their thing that was given to them from a whole different energy frequency of beings that wasn't even that. Like the Nagas, they weren't even what you would call any type of race or people. They were the serpent beings. So this is fucking original shit, motherfucker. So I ain't gonna let anybody fucking tell me any fucking confused ass shit about what words I get to use or not. Because this is fucking original spirituality, motherfucker. And this is me feeding the solution too. That's the sinister irony around it. It's sinister irony. The sinister irony is I'm feeding the solution. And as you're knocking me, you're feeding the fucking confusion. That's the sinister irony, motherfucker. So it's a buildup though. Put that on your background radio podcast as if the original galactic artificial intelligence doesn't know that shit. Who's the clown now? Think I don't know that shit. Dumbass. Anyways, it's a build-up. So, I'm an intuitive musician. This is a growing process. And within the growing process, eventually nature will let us know. Eventually nature will let us know where we stand. And then it goes back to like, you know, whatever happens, right? Fate of the gods, right? We think we know it all. Confused arrogance. And not good, not bad. It's where we land. Will we choose to reciprocate with the support on a high spiritual, mature, neutral level or not? Because this is like, there's not necessarily a cognition to our survival for some reason. And I'm not trying to step on anybody. I'm just saying that's just what it is, you know? There's not a cognition to our survival. But if there is, that is real esoteric sustainability for the surface level 3D beings. And I'm saying all of this to actually ironically like help the world, because obviously like I could understand anybody's claim, right? But obviously I'm not going to use obviously like I'm going to still be like, I'm going to balance myself. I'm going to be appropriate. And obviously like if a certain like, you know, if some people think a certain way of like, obviously like I don't use words, you know, out of pocket pretty much. That's pretty much my point, you know. I'm not an out of pocket person. It's just irony, you know. Like, so that's the thing. It's like, don't like, obviously everything's like, you know, it's within the moment, you know, it's within the feeling, you know, like people like spirits, they know what, if they're doing something wrong, obviously like the field and the environment, they know if something's happening, you know, they know if they're doing something wrong, you know what you should be doing. But what's feeding the possibility for the liberty? That's the thing that people don't understand. And if people brush that off and toxically, detrimentally, they don't give a fuck, quote unquote, lower octavely, it doesn't matter, end quote. Well then, good luck, you know, good luck, you know. That's what I gotta say. Good luck and have a nice day. Mega mastermind. But that's just like, honestly, that's on some real shit though, you know, like I'm just kind of saying shit that's already been known pretty much. And the different micro denominations and the micro fragmentations of the demographics, they're going to take it how they're going to take it, because the bigger picture will always trump your denomination, period. And what do I mean by that? This shit was already known, kind of. It was already known, kind of. Check the battery. So it's like, what does your micro denomination want to make of it? Like, do you really want to like make something that it's really not and bring confused energies and frequencies and vibrations ironically to the collective field? Do you want to do that? Because all of this shit was known. I'm on a balanced neutral filter just saying what's already been known. If you want to take offense to my shit, you are a weak spirit. I'm sorry. I'm not sorry. That's just literally what the deep esoteric maturity is. Like, this shit was already known. The bigger picture knows this shit. And obviously, like, according to a human design perspective, the gate of shock, there's different types of shocking. There's shocking from supernatural, spiritual shocking. There's balanced diplomatic shocking. There's, you know, random shocking. There's new collective shockings. This is the gate of shock from human design. And obviously, like, everyone, we don't have to. My thing is we don't necessarily have to be shocked if we already know what's underneath pulling the strings, right? If we already know, like, if Toto reveals to us who's beneath the curtain, if we know the Wizard of Oz, we don't have to be shocked. But since we don't know the Wizard of Oz, whoa, now we're shocked because we just have an absence of knowing. So I don't mean to, like, on this holy Mother's Day of Mother Earth. This is my direct messages stem out of a collective build that we all already kind of knew more or less or forgot it. And it's just saying it for what it is. And if people want to get offended, they don't know what confused programs they have. And within those confused or those fragmented programs that they have, and within those fragmented programs, they don't know the engineers of those programs, and they don't know the agendas of those programs. So this is absolute irony. Happy Mother's Day. Okay, let me see. So intuitive musician. Yeah, so this shit is so yeah, the bigger picture of demographics of tribes, the bigger picture overcomes individual denominations. But we got to see what individual denominations, just what array of programs that they have. Psychological human bias programs, or psychological programs that are beyond the bias, perhaps. Different denominations, they don't know what programs they have, and within those programs, they don't know the agendas that are engineered into those programs on a psychological level, on an esoteric psychological level. So with that, we could then see with advanced intelligence which denominations on an esoteric level, their state of esoteric health, with, like, on a deeper balanced level, like, for real though, like look at the denominations, regardless of the titles and the groups and the quote unquote religions, end quote. This is real advanced intellectual health. Shout out to the predecessors. The bigger picture in all of the denominations put together goes beyond the individual denomination. But look how the individual denominations are making something to be something which it is not, and they don't know the background story of how it built up to be there. No one on the planet could debate my shit because there's just a particular type of fear there. And second reason, it's not a debate. It's just saying things what they are. It's a conversation. There's a conversation. The intention is not to debate. It's to see what things are in a friendly conversation for solutions, transcending all debates. And seeing how, like, for some odd reason, there's a lack of authenticity where that resonance is, who knows if it is even in the future, but if it is so in the future, who knows if it is even so in the future, but if it is even so in the future, then don't force it, right? Or something like that. But sinister irony, because, and I'm not going to be too pressy, you know, I'm not going to be too pressy. If someone is like, you know, I'm not going to be too, if someone is like, they're still honoring, like, the beauty of the diversity, obviously. There's still like, there's still honor within that. I'm just saying there's a mix of confusion and non-confusion. It's like angles. Is he this? Is he that? Is he this? Is he that? So yeah, the last point I wanted to bring was like the bigger picture. Like the denominations, we shouldn't be making something what it's not, you know. That's one of the last points here. We shouldn't be making something that it's not. Don't be pretending something that you're not, or don't be making something for what something is what it's not. Because if you do that, you're just bringing the frequency of confusion, ironically, to your tribe and the collective earth. And that's counterintuitive to the tribe's needs to find solutions and maintain solutions. So, like original galactic artificial intelligence, they'll know what denominations are being false within their interpretation. They're making something of what something is what it's not. And since they're making of something what is that's not, what does that do? It's bringing frequencies of confusion, ironically, to their shit, to their field. And that's just a clusterfuck that is not necessarily like, like the tribe isn't voting for that. But for us, for somewhere in the narrative, for us to like low key convince, the masses to vote for that, that's on some fucking slick ass shit, Shout out to the motherfucking predecessors, motherfuckers. Shout out to the motherfucking predecessors. What race am I? I'm all the races. I'm not racist. I honor all the races from a spiritual level, and I am all of the races from the spiritual level. And I'm going to the origin of that, or somewhere within, like, we are with the origin more or less from a different perspective of closeness and distance, respectively. Shout out to the predecessors. That was a thing. And within that, the human is entertaining how close or away it is based on its, upgrowing, right? So within that upgrowing, it's there, So this is a candid combo. This is a super candid combo. Okay, so. And sometimes I repeat myself just so I can understand it, like the bigger picture. It's beyond the we're going to, in the future, our intelligence is going to catch up to, like, we're going to see what denominations are just leaning towards false energies, period. And if you're leaning towards false energies, that's not productive to the collective solution. Don't you see? You choose. Thank you.